Do I start?
Yeah.
Okay, what's up, guys? This is another edition. Is this one the Just Dave or the Just Dave? So we're going to take your questions through the super chats. So I got nothing prepared. Sam's going to be asking the questions, so he'll be going through there. Some housekeeping before we get started. A few things is, and I may forget some of them, so jump in if I forget.
Sure, absolutely.
We're gonna pimp out one of our affiliates, which is On It. Do we have a discount code for that, or are we just letting them know we will?
All the information is going to be in the comment section below, and we're going to be putting it in the chat as well.
Okay.
So that'll be good.
What we're doing there is elitefts has been selling On It products for a long time. So the primal bells and so forth are on our website, but when it comes to their nutritional products, they went a few years back. They went, what do they call that, B2C. They went direct to consumer, which is fine. And so now we have the ability through the podcast with a discount code to get you some of the products. I'll be completely transparent up front with people on what I've taken and what I've not taken. So we can, if they want to ask about that, we can ask about that.
Sure.
You know, I can tell them, straight up, this is probably not a good promotion for it, but any joint product that I've ever used has never done shit for me.
Yep.
So that includes theirs. So this is a really good fucking affiliate promotion, right?
It's a real one.
But the Alpha Brain, the Alpha Brain, I have used that.
Yep.
The some of the proteins I've used that. And the what I'm interested in trying, and we'll have to let them know, is the hydro, the electrolyte stuff. Which is
I saw that as well.
Which I have used those products before in the past from other companies, and I kind of think they help. So it'd be interesting to see what our followers think, if they've used any of the different products for that and how it does help. It's especially with the heat and the gyms that we train in now. So that's one of those. Of course, buying products from us is the best way to support the podcast. And this is also going to the podcast, so that's why I'm saying all this stuff now. And that's the number one best way to support the channel, the podcast, and the content as we continue to keep moving forward with all that. Did I forget anything?
That was perfect.
Okay.
It's like you knew what you were doing.
Kinda. I'm still stumbling through all this crap. But let's just roll into this.
Cool. First question here from Noah Morgan. Jacob, it's up at the top here. I'm powerlifting and using Conjugate. Still don't fully get how to implement accessories. Do you waive them? Do max effort day accessories differ from dynamic effort days, sets and reps? Just kind of a basic outline of accessories for Conjugate training. Okay,
I'm going to skim this one because I think we have this as one of the longer form topics on a future podcast. So another reason to subscribe to the channel and to subscribe to the podcast, right?
Yep.
Is that what you do with the podcast? Yeah. We're still figuring that out because this really does need a deep dive into the structure of a training day, right? And I was considering doing it on this, but it is a bigger conversation. So what I just skim the surface, what I'll say is when you're looking at training days, right? Because I did the programming podcast, which was episode, I'm going to guess, 63, right? If they don't know, go look. It's called Programming Deep Dive. So that was more of a broad overview. On a smaller overview, let's just break it down. Say you have bodybuilding, and then you have strength training. You have those two different things. The way that I like to look at this, and just follow me here, is you have, in strength training, every session matters. In bodybuilding, all sessions matter. Now, I just said the same thing, right? But I really didn't. What I'm saying here is in strength training, each session has, it's an analytical tool. It's a weak point development tool. It's a technical training tool. There's a lot of things in there that make each one of those sessions really important, very important. So in isolation, that one session can make a big difference. We see that with the Train Your Ass Off and the seminars that we do. We can bring people out for one session, make some corrections, and it makes a big difference. One session makes a huge difference. So every session matters, right? In bodybuilding, one session alone doesn't make that much difference. All sessions is what makes the difference. Yep. So consistency matters in everything. But one of it has to be looked as almost more like an endurance event to make it very, very loosely defined, and the other one kind of like a sprint. So if you think about it that way, that helps when you're looking at that training day. So now when you're looking at the training day for strength, and that's where we're going to go, Here, you have the first couple exercises, which are going to be your main exercise. This is before warm-ups and activation drills or whatever shit they want to do. So I start the session at the main movement. Some things can happen before there. There's, warm-ups, activation. Everybody's got their little things that they need to do or want to do or don't want to do. After that main session becomes the second exercise, which I call a supplemental exercise. That exercise should specifically address the weak point of that lift that's being trained on that day. So if it's a squat and that weak point happens to be upper back, that exercise there should be addressing that weak point. How do you know what that weak point is? Well, you can have a coach. I mean, there's resources online. There's elitefts.com's got thousands of articles.
It's a good place to start.
There's ways to look at that. So overview, looking at that, you can drop exercises in there that should be done based upon the weak point that you think you have. Or if you don't know what it is, just assume that it's either hamstrings or back, for the squat deadlift, and assume that it's going to be triceps for the bench. Broad assumptions, I understand, but it's going to cover the majority of the people. The way I look at that is, if I see a weak point that day on a lifter, I'm going to address it on the main lift. We're going to address it right next, right now. Right, not the next week. We're not going to wait till the next mesocycle, the next microcycle. We're going to address it right now. So that exercise then, that supplemental exercise, actually is dependent upon what happened in that first exercise, the main exercise. If the main exercise is super, super draining, that supplemental is going to be changed. It may even be pulled out because this was too much. If this looks, you're going to see where I'm going here. So that second exercise, that supplemental exercise, is generally going to be trained in a more of a strength rep base. So 3s to 5s, generalizations. And that should waive based upon the skill set of the lifter. The more advanced, it's probably going to have to change every week. If they're not as advanced, they're going to need 1 week for, I will just call it skill acquisition. Go back to the other podcast. So a week to kind of get used to it, then another week, if it's 3 to 5s, another week that, push hard on those 3 to 5s, whatever the rep range is going to be. Maybe it can be 5, but then the next week it's going to be 3. You have to still have some type of progressive overload built in there. Absolutely. If I'm programming or recommending something for somebody, I'm going to not have that exercise be the same for more than 3 or 4 weeks. It's going to change out. I would like to see it change out every week, because if you're paying attention and you're watching, that weakness that's going to be shown on that first exercise is going to be different each week. Sometimes that weak point just is activation. And so it's just getting the body to learn to do what it's supposed to do. Sometimes it's a real muscle weakness. After that supplemental exercise, which is the second exercise, it could be 2 and 3. I have an article called Supplemental Exercises, and there's a lecture that's on YouTube that is about an hour long just on this topic. That
you could speak for another hour on that too.
Yes, exactly. And I can go a whole day on just that. I'm trying to do this in a concise way, and I'm already failing. But now I think we're getting to what the question is, the accessories. And this is what I think they're talking about. Those accessory exercises are going to fall into 2 different categories. They're going to fall into exercises that need to be done to make the supplemental exercise better. So let's say the supplemental exercise, keep in mind that exercise is the one to build the main exercise. Let's say it's the JM press. One exercise is going to make the JM press bigger, because the truth is you have to do exercises outside of the main exercise to make the main exercise better, which most agree on that. Not everybody, but most agree on that. Then if they're going to agree on that, then they have to agree on, well, you have to do other exercises to be able to make the supplemental exercise better, right? So this is trickling down. So that's what I look at first. What is the exercise we're trying to build, right? So an example would be Adam. It was the upper back with the suspended good mornings, and I failed miserably on how that was programmed, but it happens. So because of exactly what I'm talking about, what exercises were being done to make that better, right? By skipping that ended up working in a not the best way. Right. So I don't know. It's not in a negative way, but it's not the best way. It could have been more optimal if the exercises were, now they are, but I had to remove the supplemental exercise to put in the exercises to make that exercise better. right? Is everybody confused now? I mean, yeah, okay, all right. So that's one way to look at it, right? That's how I like to look at it, but that's going to take more experience and a little bit more thought to be able to do. The other way to look at it is, let's just look at this as a bodybuilder. So what muscle groups do you want to train on that day? So they're going to be muscle groups that are going to be associated with that lift. So if it's a bench press, it's going to be lats, it's going to be triceps, it's going to be shoulders. And then you put that stuff in there. How to wave it. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because you can just do it in a very inconsistent way and it will work, right? Just random way would be called what, muscle confusion principle, chaos training. There's actually cybernetic training. There's a lot of different names for the same thing, but I think there needs to be some kind of thought process put into it. So if it's the bodybuilding, now these exercises, if the person is a person that thrives on consistency and doesn't like change, then these exercises you're going to want to keep the same for a longer period of time, because they don't thrive very well. Everybody's driven by different things. Some people are driven by certainty, some people uncertainty, some people, just leave it there because that's what applies here. So you got to kind of feel that out a little bit. If they're driven by certainty and you're changing that exercise all the time, you're going to confuse them. And that this is not that important in the global overview of a program to create uncertainty. You can create trust, which is going to allow more compliance with the other movements above that. Now, if they like uncertainty, randomness, I personally don't like doing the same thing all the time. So then those exercises can change, because it's thousands of exercises that can fulfill that same role. But they do still need to progress in some type of overload fashion. So either try to increase the reps or the weight, or the sets or the volume over that block, that period of time. And it's going to be a longer, this is where things get confusing when we talk about blocks and conjugate, right? Because some of the main movements may cycle in 1 to 3 weeks. If it's max effort, if it's dynamic, it could be 3 to 5. So that's going to have their own block, where the supplemental exercises may rotate in different time frames. So they're not going to have the same 3 to 5 week block. It may be 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. These accessories that we're talking about, these higher end accessories, for people that like certainty, this may not change for 5 or 6 weeks. So now you're trying to organize this block and you're wondering, why is this 5 weeks? Why is this 2 weeks? Why is it, it's conjugate. Right. The word means coupling. Yep. That's the whole point of conjugate periodization. And then the lower you go in the training day, the deeper you go, or the more exercises deep you go into the training day, the longer that exercise can stay the same. So you get down to the end of the training, which is usually when let's just say the very unexciting things, right? Yeah, so for a lot of people, this could be where the planks come in, the bird dogs come in, the ab works come in. Some people, it's reverse hypers. It's the shit that comes in that you really need to do, but you don't want to do.
It's like the vegetables.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that sometimes is because it's towards the end of the workout, so you're tired, you just want to kind of be done. But I think a lot of it is also because these exercises stay the same for so long. And they can, because their adaptation is a different type of adaptation than what you're looking for in the front end. The reps are higher, the effort's not as hard. We're more about activization, internal stability, those type of things. And that is boring as all hell. But the exercises can still change, right? It doesn't always have to be this type of plank. There's tons of planks, right? There's tons of lower back stability, internal stability, external. That now there's a lot more knowledge out there about that. So now that's easier to find different exercises to rotate through compared to what it was a decade ago. Where a decade ago it's like, okay, reverse hypers, pull down abs, planks.
Yep.
Well, what else are you supposed to just fucking do that?
Yeah, just keep going with those.
Well, that was kind of the mindset though too. It's like, fuck it, we have to do it. You just do it. You just get it over with. But what I think's happened over a period of time is that's been exposed as being an area that needs better development and training, and it does. And it's also become an area where people started to realize people stop doing this. They start just doing the main movement, maybe one other thing, and then just bolting.
Get the hell out of there.
And that works. It's a type of programming, but that's not going to work if it's conjugate or a lot of other types of programming.
Right.
So those repetitions on those exercises, a lot of times are going to be time-based. They're going to be tension-based. So I can't sit here and say they're going to be higher repetitions of 15 or 20 if we're talking about a plank, right? And they're going to be holding it for 5, 10, 15. But there's still going to be that progression based upon the skill set. You're not going to progress a plank that's going to start looking good for 3 seconds and then 2 weeks later look like shit at 10.
Right.
You know, you go from 3 seconds to 4. It's the same thing.
Absolutely. That progression needs to be in there.
Yes.
For sure.
And that would be a very concise.
That was a shorter, more concise than I was anticipating. That was really good. We actually ended up getting a few super chats while we were being concise. From Connor Morrison. I'm excited to see the answer to this. When can we watch a Dave Tate deadlift session?
Oh, jeez. Go on YouTube and just search Dave Tate deadlifts, and you can watch it anytime you want.
There you go.
There you go. That would be my answer to that.
Perfect.
I hate the deadlift. I've been very vocal about that, so I don't mind expressing that. But what I do like doing is a challenge set, and it was in one of the Train Your Ass Off videos, is a block pull where
Chains.
the weights are on the blocks and then chains. Because high rep deadlifts suck. It sucks. Anybody that's done them knows exactly what it sucks, but I love things that suck like that. And that style for me is the safest way to go about doing it without fucking something up. And you can push super hard. Outside of it just being a challenge type set, I really don't know if it has any purpose in a training program. I can't sit here and logically justify this should be done for X reason. It should just be done because you want to challenge yourself. I haven't felt the need to challenge myself on that when I have other things that I challenge myself with. But I'm not saying it won't come back, because even talking about it, I'm getting a little excited about it. And I need to find something to give my my hips a little bit of a break. So
now that was the video with you and Meadows where you ended up puking on the platform, right? Was that the
That
one?
was one of them. But that was off the floor, though.
That was from the floor.
So what we found with that, though, was we were doing those more frequently. And I believe we started with 315 with chain. It was like, ooh, that's too much bar weight. And then we ended up taking it down to, I think, 2 1/4. And then it was just frying. It was frying his lower back.
Yeah.
Right. His lower back was something we were trying to work around at that time. So then we started bringing it up, and then it came a time period, and I think we talked about this in the podcast with Gigi. We talked about, maybe it wasn't the podcast, but we were talking about how a lot of powerlifting exercises could potentially make the waist thicker. Right. The jury's still out on that. Some people, I'm not going to. That's not a hill I'm willing to die on.
Sure.
But with John at the time trying to turn pro, what's the pros, what's the cons? So let's just say this is true. What if we pull these out and we pull the heavy squats out and we just focus on these other things, and let's say this is true, and we can tighten this up a little bit, and build the lats out a little bit to create that more taper look. That's when we pulled that out, and it worked, so like I said, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but had he lost size, and that was the question, that was the biggest question there, because the squats are part of this whole thing too.
Right.
Had he begun to lose size in his legs, we would have had to go a different route, and I'm not sitting here saying I was making all these calls either. These were conversations that extended over months, to try to figure this whole thing out.
Absolutely. And we got another super chat that came in. Kevin Fowler. Hey, Dave, in your opinion, when is a powerlifter old? Let me guess. It depends. Thanks so much for the content.
It always depends, man. Let's ask this a little bit differently. How many training years do they need? Once they've become, this becomes hard because you got different genetic skill sets, once they become, and I don't even know if people know classifications anymore, but there's the class 5, class 4, class 3, class 2, and they're different with each federation anymore. But let's say once they get over class 2, how many training years after that? And the reason why I'm saying that certain class, because a certain class should be achievable by almost everybody. If they're consistent, they put in the time and they work hard, so there's a few years to be able to get there. That's when we'll say training year 1 starts. From my answer here. I'm not saying this is a global answer and this is how you count training years. It's not. This is for this. A decade, once they get a decade in after that point, then I think the training really needs to be looked at. You know, I don't want to say old, but I want to say they need to start looking at things more from a standpoint of how many meets do I have left instead of what are you training for? Right? Because at that point, each year is like icing on the cake, because most don't even make it there. This is assuming that they're competing this whole time. Now they may be out a year because of an injury or COVID, you know, or something like that. But that's what I would say. So the closer you get to that time period, the more focus you should start to put on the things you know you should put focus on. Because you're getting older, recovery is going to be a little different, you know, but the training age is a big component. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't put emphasis on that from day one. There is a time period, though, where I think you can get away with being more reckless. This is another hill I'm not willing to die on. I'm not willing to say that you should be, but I think it's a big part of the process when you can get away with it and you're younger, because you can find out how far and how hard you can push in those things, which are going to matter longer. You know, because experience is a hell of a teacher. You know, so that's the time to play around with that. You can't play around with those things after competing for 10 years. You should have already figured this shit out.
Yeah, that level of technical proficiency, I think, is important to kind of focus in on, because, say, if someone is training and competing for 10 years and they're not technically proficient at the movements, then that wear and tear is going to be greater than somebody else. It's going to be way worse,
right? So, and the more technically proficient they become, the more neurological stress they're able to achieve with each rep that they're doing. So that changes things too. And with you mentioned the super chats. I didn't say this in the what did I call it, the housekeeping thing. You know, the super chats are also a great way to support the podcast and a great way to support us doing these live, because they make a huge difference, you know, for the content team and staff.
And speaking of that, we got another one here from Fister Pistols.
Fister Pistols, man, I like that.
Best way to implement.
What the hell does that even mean? I'm so confused right now.
I'm not going to Google image search
I know.
I'm not
This
going to look
awesome.
at that. Best way to implement the rolling dumbbell tricep extension. Can it be used as a main heavy supplemental exercise? Is it more of a light accessory? That's actually good timing, because you were beating the shit out of Joey and Juji with those this past week.
It can be both. So let's look at it a different way. How strong are you first? And here's why I say that. The size of the dumbbell matters. And the video that we did with Juji and Joe will be explained a little bit more. But that dumbbell comes down, it hits your shoulder before you rotate. The length of the dumbbell head, you know, that before it hits, it changes the range of motion. You know, so if it's way down and here and it's a 20-pound dumbbell, you're grinding the shit out of your elbows. You know, so that really shouldn't be, you know, you can't really do it, because you end up doing a press, dumbbell, and then a roll, and it's really not that. Where I've done everything, where putting foam ends on the ends of dumbbells to try to simulate it. And it's better just to do a dumbbell JM press, you know, which is in one of the Train Your Ass Off videos. But let's usually 60 pounds, depends upon the dumbbell. Hex dumbbells, you know, they're a little bigger. The ones that we have are a little bit bigger than when they're the pro style dumbbells. Usually 60 pounds, 70 pounds. 80 pounds is about optimal because it's like the perfect hit. But then it gets crazy because you start to get to 100 and 120 and now you almost got no range of motion, you know, because the roll isn't in there. So this aids in my answer. The heavier the dumbbell that you're able to use, it can be more of a supplemental exercise because it can be heavier. Heavier sets of 6 are going to make sense because then it actually becomes a JM press with dumbbells. The lighter the dumbbells, the more of a clusterfuck it is to be able to perform them. So why not just find a better exercise to do as a supplemental exercise? A JM press, a close grip bench press, you know, some other movement, an overhead press, whatever it's going to be, and then throw those later as a cross-body extension or just a single arm extension until the triceps get stronger to be able to get to that point where you can do it. And you can build up, again, you put mats on your chest. I mean, there's different things that you can do. Put on a snowmobile suit, hazmat suit, you know.
So that was all the super chats right now. I'm going to go up to the top here. We got a few questions. Jacob is at the top from one Joseph Juglins. How do I gain weight? Stuck at 286 at 5'5". Need to get to 308 for my meet in 6 weeks. Please help.
Okay, man, you asked. So 280, so he's 285.
Yeah, 285, 286 at 5'5", towering 5'5".
Okay, so 286, and he's got to be 308. Wow, man, I've done that. Not at 5'5", but I've done that. How many weeks is he?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay, I mean, now it's just, you know, push the carbs up. And with the carbs, you want to, this is not healthy, by the way. Yeah, so I want to state that right from the start. This is not healthy. I'm not a nutritionist and all the other disclaimers that go along with this. Push the carbs up, push the sodium up, you know, slowly right now, because if it's 86, I would usually fall around 82, 85, but the week before the meet, I wanted to be 90 because that put me in striking range. I was never able to hit 308, but it put me in striking range to at least get 302, 305. Mm-hmm. You know, so you don't. He doesn't have to put it all on now, right? And I'm assuming this is not geared. You know, so
yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't mention it.
Because if it's geared now, this is going to change my answer because the gear is going to fit way differently, and it needs to not. It's a different conversation. I doubt it's a geared thing. It's probably just a troll, and I'm sitting here just wasting my time answering this anyhow. But anyhow, then the last week, you know, you want to basically just sodium load and water load, and either use G2 or the light Powerade Light or whatever it's called, or I just took Gatorade and cut it in half. You know, half water, half Gatorade. Pound the shit out of that. Pound the shit out of anything heavy in sodium, salt and vinegar, potato chips, ramen noodles, you know, and consistently just pound it in and watch the scale, you know, all fucking day long. Watch the scale. And it's going to be miserable, and that's all I'm going to say.
Now, you were mentioning last night during our training session about steps. Should he watch his steps under a certain amount?
Well, I seriously doubt he's got a lot of steps. So he's already figured that one out.
Yeah.
But, you know, if somebody also has a hard time, you know, going into a meet, I will ask them. You know, it's reverse conversations for so many clients and people that most people work with. It's like,
right.
Well, how many do you track your steps? Well, no. Have you ever tracked your? Look at your watch. You know, do you track?
Yeah.
Well, what is it? Well, it's 15,000. Holy shit! You're 3 weeks out from a meet. You need to pull that down. Not a lot, because you still need to recover. You still need to be outside. But is there a way you could pull that down to 5,000? I seriously doubt somebody at 5'5", 286 has 15,000 steps a day. He probably on the reverse of that is. I've been as low as 700 a day sometimes. So that's he's like that. It's bad.
Yeah.
So he would need to increase it a little bit, right? Because he increases it a little bit to say 3,000 to 5,000, which is not a lot. But get to 3,000 to 5,000, digestion improves. So the ability for you to process the nutrients, the sodium, the carbs, and everything you're shuttling into there improves greatly because you're moving, and that's circulation, and that's pushing that through. So it's actually a good thing you brought that up, because with him, it probably needs to go a little bit the opposite way. And we'll see where it goes from there.
All right, we got another super chat that came in. Any benefit from doing, this is, his names are ridiculous. You got it? It's already up on the screen? Beautiful. Any benefit to doing both sumo and conventional, or just mastering one pull?
Yeah, I think there's a benefit to doing both. You know, I most definitely do. If is a competitive lifter, let's run some scenarios. Let's say you're, you know, a medium to wide stance squatter, and you jack your hip up a little bit, you know, on your squats, and then you're a sumo deadlifter. You know, your sumo deadlift can take a hit because of that, or you might not even be able to do it. Now, if you have the ability to move conventional, then you have an option, you know, and vice versa. Say you're a close grip or a close stance squatter, and that gets, you know, jacked up a little bit. You got the ability to go out wide, so you have options. I'm not saying they have to be the same, but an option, even 50 pounds less, is an option better than no option at all. And that's not even, you know, there's the bench plays a role here too. For a lot of people, their back may cramp in a meet on the bench, or their glute cramps on the bench. So their glutes cramped, maybe the sumo becomes too painful, you know, to be able to pull in the meet, so they need to move it back and forth. How to train it in the earlier, let's say the off season, where the specificity isn't as important, and you just train both. You know, or you use one as accessory exercise and you just become proficient at both. The other reason I think it's a good idea is leverages change with weight classes and body weight. So what may be optimal for somebody now, you know, say sumo's optimal for somebody that's 181 pounds. Well, it's probably not going to be optimal when they become 285 pounds if they go that way. So they want to be moving back and forth, especially if they're gaining weight and they're moving up in classes, to be able to see which is better. And then also, for some people, there's going to be a modified too. But I think if they're practicing both, then they're better.
Well, a good example of that is Matt Mills. He's always practiced both in different weight classes, and he's been successful with both as well. He's got articles all on the site that you can kind of look at. He talks about that a little bit as well. Yeah. For strongman especially, like, we don't compete with sumo, so on paper it wouldn't benefit us to compete, but to utilize a sumo pull, but he's used it for years and years as a supplemental lift when he's focused more on strongman, or when he's competing in powerlifting, he's made the switch to sumo. And I think
the sumo pull is also going to strengthen adductors, you know, so it's going to strengthen a lot of stabilitors that are important for other things. With that, there's something else. Oh, when I've had to change it in competitions myself. It always impacted one way, or it always made it, you know, I always lost strength. But Vogelpohl was somebody that there could be videos where you're going to see an opener in a meet. He would pull conventional, then the second would be sumo, and then the third may be conventional. So he would change it actually in the meet. That's crazy. You know, based upon how it felt. So he had that ability to be able to go either way. And that was just a function of the conjugate and how we trained, because we had max effort sumo, we had max effort conventional, we had, you know, all these different stances we were training in the squat as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so that's the super chats that we got right now. I'll start pulling some. All right, this will be a kind of a fun question here. How to program sumo and conventional deadlift together in the same week? Kind of just offshooting what we were just talking about. Or would you?
I wouldn't. I mean, the first thing that went in my mind with that is why.
Yep.
I mean, if there's a good answer for that, there's always a way to be able to do it. If I was to do it and it had to be done on one day, let's say it's a conjugate. I mean, this is the other thing where some of these questions get so fuzzy, because I don't know how the overall programming scheme is. So if it's conjugate, the max effort exercise may be conventional deadlift. And then on the squat day, the speed pulls after the squat would be sumo. I mean, that's one way. So there's a simple answer, or vice versa.
Right. All right. All right, here's something a little different. Thoughts on the belt squat and its usability for leg hypertrophy? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, the belt squat is something that not, I mean, in most commercial gyms, you're not going to find one.
Well, yes, there's that. Yeah, I mean, it might be a little bit easier to recover from, you know, because you don't have the spinal loading. You know, there's still other loading associated with that. The only thing with the belt squat, and this is not really the answer. Yes, the answer is yes. Obviously, anything trained efficiently for hypertrophy can work for hypertrophy. But if you're going to make it a lat exercise, it's not going to work your legs. So watch how you're holding on. So, you know, for a lot of people, I'll try to have them do a reverse grip, you know, or put this part of their arm up against that, you know, or something to make it so they can't pull, but they still have the ability to grab fast if they need to, you know, because what happens, especially if say it's the hypertrophy, and I think, right, and this again is always debatable, it's the last reps, you know, the reps that you're going to want to cheat that count the most. You don't want to negate those last reps because you're going to grab, you know, and then pull, right? So you want to make sure those last reps are going to count. Now you can grab and pull and the last reps become 3 or 4 reps later, which, you know, which is another thing too. I mean, that's possible, but now we're talking about a compound movement for
Now it's more of a
lats.
half-field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for lats and everything else.
All right, super chat just came in. How would you program straight weight floor press on dynamic effort day for a raw lifter?
Sure, I would just rotate it. Let's back up. Dynamic bench presses can be programmed several different ways. So you have step loading, flat load. Well, step loading, you're going to increase it a little bit each week for 3 weeks, and then bring it back down. You can have flat loading where you're just going to keep it the same, you know, for 3 weeks, and then just either add sets or just keep it the same and just try to work on producing more force each time you do that. So there's no easy answer, because I can say just flat load it with the same weight, just do it for 3 weeks and then rotate it out. I like 3-week waves for dynamic work, and I like the floor press for dynamic work. If I'm going to have somebody do the floor press for dynamic work, though, I want the legs straight, because I want to take the legs out. I want more emphasis being put on the shoulders and the triceps, because the floor press, taking leg drive, right? So it exists. It's not what people think it is. It's just called leg tightness, right? Leg stability. You take that out, then what has to take over for that stability? You know, lat, shoulders. You know, so the floor press is a way to remove the legs, put emphasis in other places. You go to an incline, put the legs back in, higher the incline, you're essentially taking the lats out, right? So as you're thinking these things through, what are the weak points? What are the things that you want to overload, right? So that kind of plays into this. If you have really, really good leg tightness, leg drive, however you want to define that, then yeah, probably more floor presses with the leg straight are going to help your bench a lot, because it's going to build up something that in a loosely defined way is being compensated because of the lower body force and drive that's going through there. Reduce that, overload those muscles. The other way to do it is a Larson press where the legs are straight, but there's different ways to be able to do that. So yeah, I like that for dynamic work, the stand press or like our floor press thing. That's not really, in my opinion, a floor press, because now you're putting the legs back in it. It's just a way to do a partial range movement where the elbows are stopping instead of the bar. So the elbow stopping into the pad instead of the bar into a board or whatever it's going to be. So that's how I go about doing that.
Awesome. Yeah, we got a super chat, no question, just hanging out. So our friend Randy.
I appreciate the super chats, guys.
Says,
I really
just hanging out, absorbing knowledge, and thanks for the video. So Randy, thank you very much for that. That's awesome. Let's see. Orion XS saw a video where Louis said to do tricep extensions with a straight bar and not an easy curl bar, because the bench is a straight bar. Any real yeah, I guess just
I don't know if I
on
don't know if I really care to agree or disagree. I will say we have we got a bunch of easy curl bars over there and a bar stand that stay over there. And one was over here like the other day. I don't know why.
There's probably an animal in here we had to kill.
I don't know why, right? So I'm not saying that they're bad, not in any way whatsoever. I'm just saying that there's better exercises. So if I had to agree, if I had to, what's your position on this, and I had to take a position,
yeah,
I would agree with him on that one. Mm-hmm. You know, I would, because if there is that much of a problem with somebody's wrist and elbows that they can't do a straight bar for an extension, there's bigger issues waiting down the line, right? We all know the same issues with barbell curls, but people can get away with that one a little bit longer, you know, before that's going to start to come up and hit them in the butt.
Right.
And you lose that ability. So that's why I would tend to agree with that, but I don't know if that's really something that's here nor there. I mean, you can mix it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the last super chat that came in. I'm going to find a good question in the regular chat. Let's see. All right. Thoughts on the Zercher deadlift? I actually use Zercher squat instead of the regular low bar squat.
What is a Zercher deadlift?
That's when you hold shit in your elbows.
I know that, but what's that different than a Zercher squat?
Yeah, right. So now it's just a bigger range of motion, right?
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're holding what is the question? Is a Zercher deadlift picking the bar off the floor? Is that what it means?
Yeah.
All right, where the Zercher squat would be taking it out of a rack and squatting down.
Right.
So the question is, what's my thoughts on the Zercher deadlift? Most people can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, so my thoughts on that is it worth the skill acquisition time to be able to develop the flexibility, the mobility, and everything required to be able to do it? Mm-hmm. So I need to know what you're training for. And this is again one of those things that's here nor there.
Yeah.
Right? So let's assume, and people can make fun of this as much as they want, but it's the reality that we live in today. Let's assume somebody wants to be able to do it for an Instagram video, YouTube video, or whatever it's going to be. Well, then, yes, they're going to have to take the time to develop the skill acquisition to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And I would strongly suggest doing that than just taking a day, wedging yourself underneath there and seeing how much you can do.
Ripping it
That's
off the
way
ground.
too vulnerable of a position to be in for your lower back. If you think about it, let's put all the load in front of your spine. Let's keep your hips high, and then let's put you in the most vulnerable position you can possibly be in, and then lift a maximal load. That's not smart, especially if you can't get yourself into that position. So if that is the case, and it can be, then take the time to be able to develop that mobility. I can't believe I'm answering this, because in my brain I'm like, why would you ever want to do it? So some people might, you know.
Right.
You know, now on the other hand, let's say you're a power lifter and that's what you want to do, or football player or bodybuilder. What role does that play? Mm-hmm. And is it worth the time spent to be able to do that? Because something's going to have to come out. I assume most people with their training have it fairly well structured to begin with. Right. So if you're going to start dumping things in, something has to come out. So what's got to come out for this to come in? Isn't it worth that trade? That's where I think the majority of the people, 99.9% of the people listening to this are at.
Yeah.
That's where the conversation I'd have, and I'd say it's not worth doing.
No, I agree with that. I mean, it's one of those movements where if you're a power lifter, like you had said, that like your goal is to be a more proficient power lifter and powerlifting is your thing. Like even off season, like play around with it off season, go light, do whatever, find yourself in new positions. But like you said, the closer and closer you get to a meet, if you're finding yourself in that position, you're not doing it.
I mean, even for that though, I mean, the first goal would be able to just get in the position to be able to do it. It's so different from
every other position that you've
right. So it's not about doing the lift at the beginning. You know, it's like a baby learning to walk.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to walk before you can start taking the steps. If they just get in there and they start doing this as like a freaking crook elbow, good morning, high hip type thing, no, probably not.
Yeah, I wouldn't immediately I'm all for finding yourself in new positions when you're in an off season, or if you're just general physical preparedness, whatever. But you can probably get a better result without the limitations of utilizing a bar if you just kind of pick up a sandbag off the ground or something,
or start with this on blocks,
right? Absolutely.
And then work it down, or in a power rack and then work it down over a period of time. So there is ways to acquire the skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're all in agreement on that. It's just and there would be a point in the off season when, for a lot of them, not everybody gets all bloated, but when a lot of that tightness, because inherently when you're training for a powerlifting meet or a strongman meet, that you're going to become tighter. Before the competition comes. It's just part of the process. It's part of becoming stronger, and it's part of peaking. You got to let that kind of unwind, in the off season, and those, not that, but those type of movements that you're normally not doing have to come into the program. And I don't think people really understand the degree to which they need to.
All right. Super chats have come to a pause here, but we have a hip-related question. Benjamin down here at the bottom here, he hurt his hip, and he can't squat or deadlift for the next 6 months. How does he keep his leg size and strength as much as he possibly can through this time period?
Run whatever I say past your doctor, orthopedic, physical therapist, some type of professional, so I can protect my ass here. And I don't know what the issue is, so I don't know what the hip issue is. If it were me and I've been in that position, the first thing I would wonder is why 6 months? That's a long ass period of time. So I would ask that question to the doctor, maybe even a couple doctors or a couple physical therapists. I would really dive into that, because I don't know the issue. It could completely be legitimate, and this means to be that long. That seems very, very long, right? Because even a hip replacement, you're going to start doing movements before that. Now, bone healing and tendon healing, all that thing can take, a period of time. But I don't see any reason why simple things like leg extensions, things that are going to be more, the word I'm not looking for is grounded.
Just stabilized,
like machine, not presses, nothing like that. Just very isolated quad movements.
It's like where balance isn't a factor.
Leg extensions, seated leg curls, and things like this. That's why I have leg machines in here,
right?
And they've paid off huge for me with both hip replacements, because it takes you a little bit of time before you can even start working on the stability aspect. Just now, granted, you can stand on one leg. I mean, I'm assuming he's doing these things. He's doing one leg stands. He's doing, ISO holds and the things that he should be doing that his physical therapist has told him to do. I could be making a completely false assumption. So leg work he should be doing. Let me back up. The internal stability work, the standing on one leg, step ups, walking, those type of things that the internet is actually flooded with right now. It's not hard to find things, for that. Those, while boring as all get out, need to be the majority of the leg training. And then for hypertrophy work, or to satisfy the need, then you can stick in the leg extensions and the other stuff that I'm talking about.
So we got another super chat that came in. It's a two-part question, and we got any good push and pull exercises. Or I'm gonna rephrase his question for him. When you're having pain in your lat, have you found exercise that have helped with that, or working around lat pain, or in general?
Where in the lat would be the first question.
Yep.
Because that's a yes and no answer. They're always, it depends. We should make a shirt that says it depends with quotation marks, exclamation point, question mark. Because it's like,
Jacob, you heard the man.
It's like, come on, man. It's like, but there's different areas that are different to work around. It's easier to work around, and sometimes it becomes questionable what's really hurt, because if you start looking at the scap area, there's a lot going on there. It's like looking at the shoulder. I mean, if you look at everything that's connecting up into the shoulder region, packed. I mean, It's like throwing darts against a dartboard. Like, what's wrong? And that the scap is kind of the same, because is it erectors, is it traps, is it lats, what's tight, what's not tight, what's the root cause of the problem, where's it coming from? There's a lot of things that play into that. But the closer it, that I found, the closer it is to the spine, so around the scap type area, the easier it is to work around. It hurts, but the easier it is to work around, as long as you keep the range of motion of the movements that you're doing. Again, I'm not a doctor or physical therapist. You keep the range of motion of what you're doing within your tolerance zone.
That pain-free range.
Exactly, the pain-free range. I'm not telling you to go balls out and as heavy as you can. We need to get blood in there to be able to help it heal. So you don't want to go into pain on many of the movements, but you have more to play around. Now, if it's actually up high in your lat, you're really restricted. And a lot of that restriction is just coming because of the pain, because that's a different pain than the pain that you're dealing with when it's more in that shoulder blade area. So that part, and the other part with that is the start position, if you're to do a reduced range of motion, requires you going through pain to get to the position you can do. Because you're going to start here, that's where it's going to hurt the most. Once you get it here, it's not bad. So you have to be really careful with that type of stuff. Standing cable work, standing away from a cable machine, and like standing rows, that reduces the weight. It makes it easier for you to be able to help. Yep. I'm answering the question directly. How do you train around? Right? I'm not saying this is right. This is assuming you're doing the things to address the issue, right? Which learning how to actually use your lats is probably going to be the longer term answer. Everybody thinks that they're actually using their lats,
right?
But they're not. They're making a lot of their lat exercises like a barbell row. So they're making like an isolated lat exercise a compound movement without even knowing they're making it a compound movement.
Right.
Where a barbell row, yes, that's a compound movement, right? It's supposed to be that way. I don't necessarily know a low row should be a compound movement. A pull down shouldn't be a compound movement. Obviously, a single arm cable row should not be a compound movement.
Right.
That's not intended to work your obliques, or your erectors or your traps and all those other things. So that would be the answer there.
In really finding out why does it hurt in the first place.
I'm assuming that's being done, but that's probably a
yourself?
false assumption, because we see it all the time.
And then his second part of his question, will there be any Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu programming coming from Elite FTS?
I don't know. We may have some programs on the site now. I should know this, but I don't. I mean, you got thousands of articles.
I'm fairly certain we do. We were chatting with Phil DeRue a little bit, who's big in BJJ, so that could potentially be good as well.
Okay.
So, next question, super chat from Matt Corey. In 2019, I completely ruptured my pec tendon trying to bench 300 pounds. Is it realistic for me to get to this level again and potentially go past it?
100%. 100%. I mean, I forget who we had just recently. I had this conversation with somebody, and it was about, who was that? It was, we've been doing so many things since I got back. But it was about some doctors and the things that they say that they shouldn't say, so I've had that same injury. I know exactly what he's talking about. And they have to, screw it back into anyhow, it doesn't matter. So I was told you would never bench 400 again. And this was, shortly after coming to Columbus. And the immediate thing that went through my mind was, okay, I had a 520 at the time, but that wasn't really my best. It was my best competitive, but it wasn't my best in the gym. So I'm like, okay, so if my 520 really wasn't 520 and it was 545 or 550, somewhere at 560, but if I peaked it better, it might have been like 580, not 600, but realistically 575, 580 if I peaked it right. So if he's saying 400 and that's based off 520, so I'm doing this fucked up math, right? I'm like, so I'm really at 500 using his logic.
Right.
So I'm at the 500, then if I had 500 and I could do 500, could I put 5 more pounds on that? I'm like, yeah, I probably could. Well, then could you put 5 more pounds on that? And this doesn't make sense, right? So they fuck with your head, is where I'm going with this. Because what happened was when I started to get close to 400 again, I became gun shy. So it wasn't that I was scared it was going to tear. It was I wasn't pushing with the force I needed to push with when that came up. So I changed the way I rehabbed everything from that point forward. I completely changed it. I went from what most people recommend to what I did, which we'll just leave it at that, where I was going to address that bullshit immediately, right? And just because I never wanted to go through that again. Now, I got through it and ended up benching, to answer his question, I ended up benching way over what I did beforehand, and this raw to raw. So in shirt to shirt, raw to raw, both, over what it was. It's a shitty injury though, because what I've seen with that one is, and I don't know how many years he's been past it, the first couple of years, the scar tissue is a bitch, especially if you're, it will pop. And you're like, fuck, I tore it again. And it was just scar tissue kind of letting loose. I can't remember the amount of time, well over 10 times, going into the doctor, the orthopedic, and saying, I tore it again. I'm like, no, it's not torn. I'm like, okay, fine, cool, let's go. What the hell is it? Why does this keep happening? And then how do I get around doing that? The way I got around that, if that's the issue that he's dealing with, is I quit doing all isolation pec exercises. So everything I thought was helping, flies, band, all that crap, I'm like, fucking not doing any of it anymore. Not doing any of it. Just I'm going straight all 100% benching, keeping the specificity as tight as I possibly can, and keeping that scope very, very limited. Anything that I get hurt on, I'm staying away from for 4 to 6 weeks, and then going. And then it started to smooth out and quit happening. And then I was able to start to put some of those things back in again. I think what was happening is it was just rushing things a little bit too fast from there. So to answer the question, most definitely, if that's what you want to do, that's what you're able to do. 100 fucking percent, way over that too.
Awesome. Another super chat, John Clemier. We're doing lifts like the Jefferson deadlift and the hack deadlift. Have you seen that? It's like the behind the back deadlift. Prevent overuse injury versus just mainly doing squat, bench, dead. Love the channel.
I'm gonna say no, right? And I know where this question can go.
Yeah.
Where if it's taking time away from those other exercises, right, to lower the wear and tear from those exercises, the answer would be yes, of course. But now you're putting in exercises that you're gonna have just like the Zercher deadlift we were talking about earlier. You're gonna have low technical tolerance for. So now you're going to try to do a deadlift with your back slightly twisted, right? I don't know if that's really a good idea unless you've practiced and you can get in the position to be able to do that. In my experience, most powerlifters can't get in the position to do a lot of these, let's call them exotic exercises. And that's probably not a good thing, right? Before me, maybe yes, as we talked earlier, maybe it is a good thing, but after me, it's probably not a good thing. So again, it's why. And my answer to those two is exactly the same.
Yeah.
If you go back later, and is the answer with the Zercher deadlift.
All right. We got more super chats that are coming in. Now they're flowing in. That's great.
Cool. What's our PR on the super chats, right? So hopefully, let's try to break a PR on this, guys.
Well, I think we're pretty close. I got to comment on this one. Noah Katz, a $99.99 super chat just got dropped.
That's a record. Super appreciate that. Big time.
Recently cut weight from 308 to 225. Deadlift fell from 780 to, oh my God, my screen keeps jacking up. 780 to 660. Starting position is completely different, obviously. Been trying to find a similar strength in this new position, right? So he's lost the weight and his deadlift is going down. He's been trying to do tempo work and pause from the floor. No improvements. What do we recommend?
Okay. First off, props on the weight loss. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of weight loss, man. So, it's it takes a lot of work to be able to do that. So first thing I want to say is, read as much as you can from Vincent DeCenzio's coaching log and articles that he's done for us on how to keep the weight off. Because that's the bigger challenge. It's a huge challenge to go from 308 to 225. The bigger challenge is keeping it down there. And that's a challenge I failed several times. So that's a huge one. Now, your leverages have obviously changed. So I'm going to assume that you've tried moving from conventional to sumo, sumo to conventional. You've tried stances and all the other different things. So the first advice I'm going to give on it is just be patient. And the other thing is understand if you've pulled 780 before, you understand training, right? So your 1RM, this is going to sound very, very simple, right? But just follow me. Your 1RM has changed. It's different. So your perception of your strength needs to change with that. You could, if I'm guessing, and was sitting and talking to this person for a little while, he's probably overreaching on way too many of his training sessions. Where if you were to compare what his training weights are compared to what his max are, percent-wise, compared to his training weights when he was pulling 780, to that 780 max, there's going to be a big variance, big difference, to where more of his training weights are probably in an 80, 85, 90% range, but he's, in his head, used to the weights, 680, 650, 700, 720, not being hard, where now they're hard as fuck. So it's frustrating. I understand the frustration.
Sure.
It's frustrating as all hell, but you have to reset, and I don't want to say lower. You have to reset your expectations to be able to have a realistic training weight that you're training with. So you can start training with weights to be able to get stronger. I know many, and this is kind of the same thing, many washed up meatheads, and that becomes, seems to be the group that I'm becoming a part of, and am. I'm not going to say becoming a part of, I am. I know many of them that used to bench way over, what they bench now. And let's say they used to bench, 400 for reps, or 455 for reps, or some 500 for reps. And now all of a sudden, 315 for 3 is a bitch. And it's frustrating, and somebody I was talking to the other day, the 365 for single, and they've done 200 pounds more raw. It's like they're frustrated, but they're happy. It's a weird fucking place to be in. Because in their mind, they're like, I was doing this 20 years ago for fucking 10. It wasn't even hard. I was joking around eating Cheetos before I lay down to do it.
Right.
And now I got to hit ammonia and run around the gym before but that expectation has to change because the stress, for one thing, of being frustrated and upset because you're not where you used to be. You got to recognize you're not as strong as you used to be, right? But maybe, pound for pound, he's probably going to end up stronger.
Oh, I would say
but
so.
I think that's what the problem is he's overreaching on things. And if it's not that main lift, it's the supplemental exercises. They probably haven't dropped as much in the load, in the weight, is what they should to correspond to the lift. So he ends up overreaching on those things. So his recovery is being hindered. Plus losing all the weight. Now, if he's stabilizing at 225, and he's been stabilizing there, recovery is going to start to get better. But as you're dropping the weight, recovery is going to be hindered because you're in a calorie deficit.
Yeah, and he's talking about his starting position in the deadlift itself, right? Because if you're 308, you have a belly pressing against your thighs.
Yeah, play around with your belt position.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some hacks, right? Play around with your belt position. I've done, just for training purposes, when I was leaner, I would do things like take one of them Indian rugs and put it under my belt, to add more circumference around my waist, just to try to find that starting position, just as a hack to be able just to train it, and because it's different. And where your belt's going to go is different. Everything just kind of changes. So patience again, but I think this is probably more overreaching.
Yeah, I mean, especially with something like tempo work, right? So if he combines his thought that maybe weights that are overreaching for him should be what he uses for tempo work, now he's using excessive weight for these positional exercises, which again, he's just beating himself up on both ends of that. But yeah, no, Noah, thank you very much. And again, if you want more information, Noah, send us an email and we can help you out. That was awesome.
The videos.
Videos for sure.
Links to the videos.
We definitely want to help you as much as we possibly can. All right, so super chats are still rolling through. From Jerku, what is your opinion about deficit deadlift, even if the weight moves good from the floor? Just wanted to say thank you very much for the huge amount of great content that you put out for free. So essentially saying, if his...
Well, let's just pause for a minute. So if the weight moves bad from the floor, the expectation is I would like that. If I'm reading this, if we're reading the question right?
So
what you see what I'm saying? Like what is your opinion if the weight moves good? Like my opinion would be good if it moved bad. You know, so
right.
I don't know where he's going with this. You know,
essentially he's using a deficit deadlift when his speed off the floor of his normal pull is good. Like he's not slow off the floor. His weak point
should
in his
he even be
deadlift.
bothering with it?
Correct.
Sure, it's a supplemental exercise. Rotate it through, see how it helps.
Yep.
You know, there's no problem with experimenting on different things if you think it has some type of carry. Here's probably the better question. How do you know if an exercise is helping you? Mm-hmm. That you rotate in there. Yep. If you're training conjugate, it's where most of my experience is, where my bias is. So if you're training conjugate, you're going to notice if an exercise is making a difference on your speed work almost immediately. Mm-hmm. It's going to just start to feel a little poppier, you know, a little more explosive, a little tighter, almost immediately. I mean, it's within a week or two. You're going to notice if the progression of the movement is smooth after the acquisition. So if it's a new movement, say somebody's never done a stiff leg deadlift before, or not a stiff leg deadlift, but a deficit deadlift before, and they pull off 3 mats, and the first time they do it, it's 500 pounds, and it just feels like shit, but they pulled it. And then the second time they do it, it's like 550. Well, you just learned how to do it better.
Right.
You know, so that's what, now if it progresses over a period of time to the 550 and the 565 and the 580, and it just keeps building, and then your max effort exercises are going up, and your speed work feels better, then there's a builder, right? There's something that's going to help build things. So that's definitely working. Now, how do you know if exercise isn't working? If you're not noticing any effect, you know, over the period that you put it in there. It's not saying that it won't work at a different time for a different reason, you know, but that, or if it hurts, you know what I'm saying? The obvious things.
Right.
But it needs to be said, because they'll see somebody do an exercise, or somebody will tell them to do an exercise, or a coach will tell them to do an exercise. And maybe it impinges their hip a little bit, or their knee just feels a little out of sort when they do it. Not that much, but it's like, fucking, I'm just going to train. That's probably not a good exercise.
Right, absolutely.
Right? It's maybe just moving your stance a little bit, takes it out of that position. But if there's pain that's not normal pain, and it's almost ridiculous that this needs to be said, but it does, because it happens. Right. It's a reality. It's like, well, maybe it'll be better next week. Well, if it's not a main movement, then
what the hell are you doing?
Yes, then it's probably not going to be a good exercise for you. Because let's say each week it has to progress up, and it hurt a little bit on week 1. What do you think it's going to feel like on week 2?
Let's add more weight to it.
Yes, it's not. It's kind of common sense.
So this question I think will probably be more directed to me. Wes Jenkins says, recently recovered from a herniated disc, but now I'm dealing with sciatica pain in my left leg. Any exercises to regain strength in the legs and back? You want to start with that? All right.
Oh, you?
Yeah, so it doesn't sound to me like you're recovered from your herniated disc if you're still dealing with sciatica pain, right? So anytime, again, I don't know, consult with a doctor, a clinician, but anytime you're dealing with some sort of a low back pain, you need to understand where that pain is coming from and what source is that pain coming from, right? So I don't know how you did it, a herniated disc, but you got to ask the question, why was there so much force going into your spine in the first place? It could be a movement imbalance. You could have done it lifting. Most of the time people hurt themselves doing stupid shit. It can be getting scared from the toaster going off, or bending down to tie your shoe, or it's usually in a position where you are not conscientious of your movement pattern or your movement style. But when it comes to sciatica pain and anything that's shooting down the leg, definitely talk with a clinician to figure out, get some imaging, go through some physical assessments. I'm a McGill certified practitioner, so we have a network of McGill clinicians that work with people to help diagnose low back pain. But at the end of the day, I don't know where you got the idea that you're recovered from a herniated disc if you're still dealing with constant sciatica pain shooting down your leg. So I would say separate your performance training or what you're doing in the gym, on the platform, from where you think you are, and drop it back towards that rehab side of things, because you're definitely not ready to lift at the level you want to train at the level you want to, and you need to take the appropriate time to heal. And it takes longer than you think, right? Brian Carroll was doing his stuff for seemingly years, right? He was just doing everything he needed to do to get back under the bar. And if you rush it, you're going to prolong the process. It's going to make it worse. It's going to make it worse, and you're not going to get better. Take the time now and do what you need to do, whether that is PT, chiro, whatever sort of modality you choose to go down. I would take more time and prioritize your recovery and not necessarily worry about strength of the legs and back. We got to work on stability of the spine. We got to work on stability of the torso and the core musculature and your overall athleticism to be able to maintain positions and move properly, so that you're not just picking the scab of what it is that put you in that position in the first place. So
I totally understand the mindset of training through things, and I've done it my whole life, and I'll probably always do that. But two things that are not red flags, they're like bombs exploding that are to stop, pause, assess, and this isn't to be trained through or trained around. It needs to be corrected. Those two things, in my non-clinician opinion, experience position: pain running down anything, right? Pain running down your arm, pain running down your spine, pain running down your leg, pain running down anything. Transferent pain, that's a pause. What the fuck? That you have to figure that out. Yep. Especially if you feel it running down, because it's usually never what you think it is. Right? So a lot of people with the sciatica pain running down the leg think it's their groin, think it's their quad, it's the back. So that's one example. That's the pause, and that's one of those things where it's a big pause. It's like, okay, stop, pause, reassess. We need to take 4 to 6 months to get back to the starting gate, which I talked about before. The other pause: multiple injuries in the same area. So say right leg, left leg, right arm, pec, boom, boom, boom. I'm dealing with the same, right? So it's 3 in the same, or it's more than a fluke. Yep. It's like something is going on here now, and it's not just one injury. In my opinion, it can be a fluke. It can be okay. It's the multiple you can never state why one injury happens. Right. People can assess and make all their assumptions, but prove it. There's unless it's an acute injury, prove it. Right. Well, nobody can. Okay. Same thing with 2 in the same area. Okay, prove it. They can't. Now 3. I don't care if they can prove it or not. Something fucking is going on. Sure. But now if you need anecdotal evidence, it's like, dude, there's 3 injuries within the same area, within the same time period. Obviously, something's not working the way that it should. So you need to stop, figure out what it is, no matter how long it takes, because it's not going to quit happening until you figure out what it's going to take. And while it's easy to push through, the first one, I would probably fall on the other side of the fence, push through the first one. I could still contact the doctor, all the other stuff, but that's, I get that. I get that more than anybody. After even after 2, you should start thinking, okay, what's going on? Right. 3, it's a 100% direct, whoa, stop. This may require not even training for a period of time. It has to. It's like nerve issues. Something's going on that's going to take longer to fix than just a bunch of blood work or a chiropractic adjustment or a stim or whatever. Something's going on. Those two things, transferent, running down something, and that are big bombs.
Yeah, something's not right.
No, because if you don't address it, it will fuck up the next 3 years of your training.
Oh, yeah.
So address it and just deal with the 6 months or whatever it's going to take. And then you still got the 2.5 years to be able to make progress from there.
Yep, absolutely. Super chat from Vibes. So this one we may have to write down. All right. I've been trying going heavy day 1, volume day 2, and heavy day 3, trying to beat what he did on day 1 for his supplemental movements. Is this something good to do?
It depends what days, how the days are spread. If you're talking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, probably not.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's not going to last for a long period of time. So heavy day 1, so I'm assuming a max effort type thing.
Right. Volume day 2.
Then heavy day 3.
Day 3, trying to beat what he did on day 1.
If that's like a Monday, Thursday, and Monday, then I can see that.
Yeah, it depends how long the training week is.
But I don't know what the difference is between these days. If this is within like a 5-day period, no.
Yeah, right, no.
No, it's not a good idea.
Okay. So we have from Tom here. He says, super chat just to say thank you for the great information and stories. Thank you very much, Tom. And now we have Nick Scarfo with a super chat. Let me just pull it up here. Oh, where to go? We got, what exercises would you suggest for someone who trains at home but can't deadlift due to noise that would help it due to noise? What would help him get his deadlift up? Max effort or supplemental? Thank you. Just kind of how to get your deadlift up if you can't deadlift.
Because of noise?
Just live in a library?
Well,
on a second, third floor or something?
Neighbors.
Right.
I can kind of get what's, I've heard so many stories over the years about people deadlifting in their garage, and the neighbor comes over pissed off because their deadlift cracked the fucking drywall on the neighbor's garage. Like, well, congratulations on the big deadlift. It's
the deadlift quieter.
Well, there's still 2 answers. Let's figure out how to make the deadlift quiet, right? So there's, and I don't know if this is, I'm assuming this is just your, don't take this the wrong way, recreational power lifter, just wants to get stronger deadlift. It's just use a slower tempo, just lower it slower. That's going to lower the crash to the floor. There's crash mats, which can help. Pulling off tires while it's a little odd, that can help. I don't know what the noise threshold he's talking about is. It could be the plates rattling. I don't know what it is.
Right.
I'm assuming it's the floor, right? So there's ways to lessen that. It's building your platform under used tires. So used tires first, then platform. That's going to absorb, a little bit better. Takes a little bit more time to get it balanced, but it can help with that. Crash mats again are another way, but it's a more expensive way. That's one way to address it. The other way to address it is there are things like suspended good mornings with a safety squat bar. So and you put yourself in the same start position as what you would be in the deadlift. So this is for conventional. For sumo, sumo probably a little bit different, but probably the same thing. You're essentially doing the same movement pattern if you set the straps up in the start position up in the right way. And you could take it a step further by doing that movement. It's not really suspended good morning. It's more like an Anderson, lift, but most people are going to notice a suspended good morning. So you can do that as well as a light deadlift bar that you're doing at the same time. So you're doing both exercises at the same time. So there's ways to go about what he wants to do. The easiest way would be to figure out how to not make it so loud. Well, I mean, it's funny. It's the reality he lives in. I mean, I want to laugh about it, and I kind of did, and I apologize, but I'm not in his situation.
Right.
So I don't know what that is. He wouldn't be asking the question if it wasn't something that he has to figure out. So I want to help him figure it out.
Absolutely.
Me personally, I would just say, fuck it and just do it. But that's me. I'm willing to suffer the consequences of my mistakes and actions.
All right, so that's all the super chats we have right now. We're kind of running up onto the 90-minute mark, so I'm just gonna say that.
Did we miss some?
Did we got some?
I think we got one from Walt Whitman.
Oh, Walt Whitman. There it is. Yeah, he didn't ask a question. He just dropped us.
It's the comment right below it.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, beautiful. I'm not asking about gear. For someone with low testosterone, what should they want their total and free testosterone to be?
I mean, I can't tell you that.
Yeah,
that's an
that's a
answer
lot.
for a doctor, because there's other variables that play into that. There's other hormones that kind of play into that. And I am not a doctor. I'm not a specialist in all this. So, one person's free testosterone compared to somebody else's free testosterone, it's what's going on with other things. I can speak about myself,
Right.
And the issues that I have to deal with, and balancing stuff, and I get fluctuations in free testosterone and the testosterone and DHEA and the other thing, thyroid, all these other things are all playing this little role, and it's a balancing act that I'm fortunate to have a doctor that knows how to help balance that all out. But it's not so much about the one or the other variable, it's how they're all fitting within each other with these other factors as well. So I think the question should be about testosterone replacement therapy and finding a doctor that knows how to work with that, because if it is TRT, the doses are not what people think. I mean, I'm on, fucking 400 milligrams, a week of TRT. That is not TRT.
No.
That is not, that's a cycle, so it's not, it's a different conversation, but that would be better directed to somebody that.
Yeah, find a clinician that can kind of piece
that
that
works
information
with that.
together.
It's especially with things like that, because you can find it's becoming more popular and it's easier to get a script. So people are going to their local doctor and they're getting a script. Well, that's fine. Your local doctor doesn't know a damn thing about any of this.
No.
So you got to find somebody that knows more about what's going on.
Absolutely.
Because there's way more going on there.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope, right? Because if you find you can find these
Find whatever you want,
doctors
right? I
online.
mean, yeah. So you have to find. I think people understand that they're going
Yeah.
to find what they're looking for. If somebody's looking for a TRT that's going to be 2,000, 2 grams a week, they can probably find it if they look
Yeah.
hard enough. But is
Right.
that TRT? No, it's not. So TRT is being within the normal range, but it's being within the normal range with everything else being good too. There's way more to it than just that.
Absolutely. All
And
right.
there's other things that affect it too.
Oh, well, yeah, the
You know,
lifestyle
sleep,
factors.
lifestyle. I mean, there's a
There's-
lot of other things that can pull that up before that even is approached.
Yeah, and I think kind of flipping those stones over and seeing if those have any impact as well is probably a better
Yes,
route initially
yes,
than
yes.
to just go the more, I guess, TRT route.
Yeah.
All right, so that's all the super chats that
All
we
right.
have.
Well, let's do a last call
all right, let's
for
do
the
it.
super chat. So,
Sounds good,
anybody
guys.
that's got any questions, the super chats do help. I want to put that out there again.
Yeah.
I feel like I keep, pimping out the site and begging for super chats, but it helps, man. It helps a lot because the whole part of the content is to be able to give you guys what you want, and this lets us know if we're doing what you guys want and giving you what you want and moving forward with what you want. I mean, I just said the same thing 5 times in a row, so I just do that. The other thing that helps too is comments. I don't necessarily read anything after the first 10 or 15 comments, but it helps the algorithm.
Sure
So,
does.
the comments definitely help, and put in the comments. And I will say this: anybody that takes the time to put things in the comments that they would like to see, we're probably going to look at doing that. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, as part of that team that does that, we take ideas directly from.
Yeah,
the
I mean, if
comment
somebody's
section.
going out of their way to actually take the time to put a comment in there of what they want, that's probably going to be looked at a little bit more, and anybody that goes out of their way to put in the comment that they appreciate what they're doing, that helps a lot too, because that's it's taking that extra step. And if it's the podcast, the reviews help tremendously. Anybody goes out of the way to put the reviews, that helps tremendously with that as well. Because we're trying to balance a lot of different types of content. It's what we're starting to find is people that may find us on YouTube have no idea that we have 4 or 5 articles published every single month. We've been doing that for 15 years.
Yeah.
So there's a whole article side of content. There's the audio side, which is the podcast side. Then there's the video side. So we are trying to balance with the same number of staff where to put the energy and the effort to the people where it's going to get the greatest reach and make the biggest difference and have the biggest impact. So that's why the comments help. That's why sharing things helps tremendously, because if you like this in a video format, and then you're sharing it, it's going to drive the video format views. And then if it becomes, we have to decide, do we keep doing this as audio, or if we can't have the time to do both, right? Then what's going to get pulled? Well, the one that's obviously got the higher engagement is the one that's going to stay.
And I think people forget that the team isn't huge. It's not a team of 30, 40 people. Right?
No.
It really is such a small team that we're all just doing all these different things, making it all kind of happen. And I think reminding people of okay, we're not.
Yeah, there's not 100 people. There's 15 people that work here.
Right.
And 3/4 or a third of them are content.
Yeah.
So then there's other things we're all doing too. So that's the other part, is we're all doing different things. So we have to allocate our time into what people want the most.
Absolutely.
So how do you define what people want the most? Well, what they're supporting the most, obviously what they want the most.
For sure.
So
actually during that, Andrew Goss dropped a super chat. Thanks for the content. So Andrew, thank you very much.
Yes.
And I think that's all of them for right now.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted to wrap it up. You want me to wrap it up? Or?
Yeah, we can wrap it up. I'll just say thank you guys for the super chats. It'd be interesting to see if we break a PR. I'm always into breaking PRs or anything, just for any reason. So
we got one. We got one.
Yeah,
just right,
yeah.
the nick of time here.
Yeah.
Matt Corey, his follow-up question: if I'm able to do Pec Flies without tissue, without issue, should I? He was the one with the pec tendon, or because of my past injury, it's simply not worth it.
If you're not having, he said he's not having issues.
Correct. He can do Pec Flies.
Yes, he should. He definitely should. What I would suggest, and there's nothing more than just experience and anecdotal evidence, is cable flies if you can.
Yep.
Standing, take gravity out of it. Because gravity, that doesn't. It's not totally taking gravity out, but it in a way it is. It's allowing you to be able to control the range of motion better, because gravity's not pulling dumbbells straight down to the floor. So at no point in time is it going to go one way accidentally for some weird ass reason.
Yep.
Which can happen. It's rare, but it can happen. It will never happen if you're standing, with the cable fly. So, and you can change, the height and the range of motion with that to lessen the shoulder engagement, because you want more of the pec engagement with that.
Right.
And with that specific exercise, when I do it, the only thing I worry about there is blood in the muscle. That's it. It's one of those things that it's really, really hard, because it's not a press. And if you made it a press, you're not going to be able to make it heavy enough to create super stimulus, for maximum massive growth like you would get with a dumbbell press. So I hate saying pump. I just can't stand it. So on that, it's kind of more about the pump than anything else, and then where it is, right? So if it's all in the front delt, then change the location of the cable.
Yep.
You know, change the location of the wrist position or something to be able to get it more in the pec. And it's going to be the thing with the torn pec, like he's talking about, is it takes a while before you can start to get a normal pump, if it even ever comes again. So I can't on either. So I have to like kind of like guess, you know, how much blood's in there, because they're just tore to shreds on what's in there. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to do anything to try to put something in there.
Right.
But I do know if my shoulders are pumped from doing it, then I know something's not
Yeah, absolutely.
right with that.
And we got another super chat just came in
There we
too.
go.
There we go. Jay Bell, can you please provide general tips on mastering a deadlift bar? I'm competing with one in October, but pulling less than I do with a stiff bar.
Start your slow. This is going to sound odd. Start your slow pull, or start your pull slower. Okay. So there's a lot of cues that I've used where I can say pull the slack out of the bar. I can say pull the bar until you hear a click. You can say pull the bar slower. You know, it's all the same thing. You know, if you initiate the pull off the floor a little slower and then generate force after it starts moving, it's going to allow you to become in a better position. It's not going to whip you. It's not going to come into this weird ass movement that you don't want to have. So I don't know how else to really
Practice.
yeah I mean, yeah, definitely
Give it some
practice.
time.
You're going to figure it out. You know, there's different ways to figure it out.
Yeah, and you had mentioned about deadlift bars in the past is that click is super important. You hear if someone is trying to pull the slack out of a lighter weight, they can't do it. So it's less about the slack at lighter weights. It's more about that click and the tension through the body as opposed to.
And the other thing is if they try to just start pulling slower, it does the same thing.
Absolutely.
They all three, they're doing exactly the same thing. So it's just getting your body into a little bit better position to adjust the pull. But the other thing with the deadlift bar and the more you use it, the more you're going to get used to it. The other thing with the deadlift bar is mid position for a lot of people that are used to a straight bar, it gets a little funky.
Yep.
Right, because it starts with a whip, and then at a certain point, you know, the whip begins to go away. And then they're not. It's almost like they have to learn how to initiate two pulls, where it's just one smooth one, but it feels at first like it's two different pulls.
Right.
So when they should be pushing the hips forward, they end up pulling the chest up, or they end up using their back instead of the hips because of the way that it feels. That will work its way out over a period of time.
Awesome. So there we go. That's all of them.
That's all of them.
Yep, that's all the super chats that we got right now.
Okay, let me think of a close before you close. So words. Last time I had words of wisdom. So let's say words of wisdom here. Okay. Things seem to start being getting whacked again. You know, so I've done. It's kind of political, but not political. I avoided the news for almost all my life until the last year. And then obviously I got sucked in like everybody else gets sucked in. And then starting to pull myself away from it. Because what I've realized is anybody that thinks that they can change the world, they're not going to be able to. Right? And if you get to the position to where you're somebody that can change the world, you're probably not a good person. Right? Because think of the people that have made massive changes in the world and how they were made. Most of them probably weren't really good, right? And so I think the focus is worry less about trying to change the world and worry more about not letting the world change you. And then that makes you focus more on what's important. And then it's easier to handle, you know, the crap that gets thrown of our way. And it's easier to not get distracted and get sucked down, you know. And I did the same way as everybody else, and I learned, you know, from my mistakes. And I do think it's a mistake, because I think both sides of either issue, they're all fucked, you know, either way that you look at it. And the answer kind of is in the middle, because I ended up letting the world change me. And then when I realized that was the case and went back to, you know, what I just said, you know, things are way better, way different, and able to make a difference with the people that you care most about. So that would be my advice there, is don't try to change the world, just don't let it change you. So peace out.